All right. Welcome to T Simple Podcast. We focus on providing simple solutions in the classroom. I have someone who I wish I had with my first year teaching. I'm sure you wish you had for your first year teaching. I have a coach, Miss Jae Ricks. She is a leader, a school leader. She is a consultant, an educational consultant. She has a reputation for being a dynamic leader. Her spirit, and so I met you, on Clubhouse, and even though I don't know what you look like, your spirit and just your overall presence is definitely how can I say, it's just good to be around. It's very welcoming, and if I was a student in your class, I definitely would appreciate you, just to be there. Jae is a coach, a leader, speaker, consultant. She's passionate about ensuring all students have access to equitable, okay? Keyword is equitable, not, equality. We give everybody money, give everybody laptops. No, we want to dig deep. We want to know, what do you really need compared to the next student, because we do recognize your differences and that stuff matters. Even though your similarities do matter, but your differences do matter. And that's why equity is super important when we're talking about education. Everything in education, from the textbooks, curriculum, to the policies that govern teachers' work and students, Jae has the answer. She has the antidote. What's up? How you doing today?
Hey. Good evening. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me. With that introduction, I might need you to be my hype man every time I go into, into a meeting or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's talk about teacher tip of the week. So I feel like every time if I give a tip each episode, I come out with at least 30 episodes. The teacher hears those episodes, they could probably get, some type of advice. Maybe they'll stay in the classroom. So that's really the purpose of the teacher tip. So equity, again, giving kids what they need. I figure like we found that out during the pandemic, that
Oh, definitely.
if we don't think through equity lens, we don't make decisions through equity lens, then we end up, how can I say, putting band-aids on problems that deserves a lot more than just
I
that.
agree.
One example were the laptops, right? Everyone
Yes.
got laptops, right? But one thing we didn't know is that the science literacy was a missing component, right? And that varied depending on where you live, depending on your socioeconomic status, depending on
Mm-hmm.
your culture, right? And we expecting that this achievement gap can still be closed and we can keep the competition, but no, it's not the same, right? Our
Not at
needs
all.
and other kids' needs are completely different. And it was very, I don't say it was insulting, but it's just like, how can we just make these quick decisions, expect everybody to just change, and we just like, okay, now we got to do this again? It's just like the lack of consideration, I felt, was just, it wasn't considered. But it was a pandemic. A lot of people weren't considered. But that's my teacher tip of the week. What about you, Jae? What about you?
So to kind of piggyback off of what you said, this definitely was a time that really prove the inequitability when it comes to education, and especially when it comes to providing equitable education to minority students and low income students. Because yes, probably every school district across the country went in with the idea that, oh, it's virtual, let's push out technology, let's push out these Chromebooks and these iPads, these hotspots, and let's get families internet. And you always want to assume positive intent, so you want to assume that they were doing all of these things to really support students and to get them the assistance that they needed. However, where that wall hit was when they realized that a lot of the internet service providers didn't really provide for those, those quote unquote areas. And so instead of it really helping, it further highlighted just how much of a problem it is when it comes to educating minority students, which was really unfortunate. Um, so
Yeah.
if I could flip it just a little bit, I think a tip that I would give in lieu of that information and us being in a pandemic is really at this point being willing to show each other grace. So whether that's showing your students grace, showing the parents grace, showing your fellow colleagues grace, or your administrators, just really understanding where we are right now as a nation when it comes to education, and doing the best that we can with what we have, and trying to create, those safe spaces and create the best lessons or the best plans that we possibly can to reach as many students as we can. Because right now, there are so many students that are not showing up for classes. There are so many students not logging in, either due to technology issues or just because they're not in a brick and mortar school building at this time. So really thinking in terms of, okay, well, how can we do our jobs to the best of our abilities with what we have, and continue to extend that grace to students and the community as a whole.
Why do you think it was so hard for us to simply extend that grace? I just felt that it's all about the leader, right? If the leader isn't extending the grace, why should I extend the grace? And that's very general. But if you think about even like with the unemployment, right, and
Mm-hmm.
those checks that they gave out, and
Right.
people were like literally fighting against giving people money.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of like, what example should I follow? So talk about that a little bit. So how important was being a leader during this time?
Oh, it's very important because a lot of times, people do look at you. They do watch to see what you're doing. They do listen to hear the things that you're saying. And so you have to be the one to step in to say, hey, I know things are tough right now, and I know things can get overwhelming. But however, let's come together. Let's put our heads together and figure out the best solution or the best way to tackle the situation that's going on right now, instead of fighting against one another. And so, yeah, you do have, leaders who may not be in that same headspace. And so they may have an all about me mentality, or this is the way that we're going to do things. I really don't care about how you feel or what you think about it. And it's unfortunate that some people tend to think that way. And those are the campuses where they do have a lot of teachers that are burning out and leaving, or they have a lot of upset parents, or they have a lot of students who aren't willing, to show up. And that's because of the leadership, unfortunately. But, for those campuses or those areas where leaders are really doing their best to try to keep everyone together and keep everyone's head above water, um, those are the ones that are continuing to thrive, and those are the ones who are, moving on in their day-to-day practices and really reaching students and families.
Yeah, because even when the going gets tough, the leader still has to keep pushing. But you got to keep telling the truth. So you shared the article that you wrote in your blog, and you had this really interesting quote. I would like to share it, and then we can react to it. So everything in education, you said, from the textbooks to the curriculum to the policies that govern teachers' work and students' learning, is politically and ideologically informed. So, what did you mean by that when you wrote that? And I asked that question because I just felt like once we got into this virtual setting, I just felt like the wealth gap, the inequity gap, the achievement gap, it had all this potential to widen, because people are like that, right? Because
Right. All right. So I incorporated that particular quote into my blog because one of the things that I consistently hear or read, especially after something happens, within our nation or our community, and then it's expected that educators will go back into the classroom and have these crucial conversations with students about things that have taken place. And one of the first things that many people say is, oh, you can't talk politics in the classroom. Oh, you can't say this or say that to students in the classroom. But the reality of it is that politics is education. Education is politics. And so, looking through a political lens, it plays a huge role in how minority and low income students are ultimately treated. So Alyssa Hadley Dunn is an assistant professor of education at Michigan State University. And so that was actually her quote that she mentioned in an article. And so it really resonated with me because until there are policies and procedures that are changed within our government, in order to support minority students, in order to support low income students, this is always going to be a problem. And I'm not the first to say it. There are many more before me that have said it. There are many more people that are currently saying it. And I'm pretty sure, there's going to be many more people after me that's going to say it. But the reality of it is keep being said because nothing has been done about it. So at this point, it's like, well, where do we go from here? What do we do? And so I know that there was this group started called, Teachers for Good Trouble. And so I need to do a little bit more research about it. But from what I've heard so far and what I've seen, it's a lot of great educators that have come together to really be vocal about the inequalities and the injustices when it comes to minority and low income students. So I'm curious to see what's going to come from it.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I imagine you leading, that type of movement just with your mindset and this.
Oh, I'm all for it.
Where did you get that from? Goldie Bahamut, she talks about having like a high criticality, teaching high like critical thinking to kids because then they can question everything.
Mm-hmm.
You mix that with a high intellectualism, then you have someone who's questioning stuff, but they have a moral compass that is rooted in logic and reasoning. So where did you get that from? Who taught you to not only be a leader, but like create systems and be a part of organizations that you can have an infrastructure to really affect change?
I think it's a combination. Well, actually, I know it's a combination of how I was raised, but also just my personality in general. In a sense, I've always been a fighter in in the physical sense and in just mentality. But you grow out of the physical. That's you leave the childish things behind. But really having positive role models in my life, like for example my grandparents. So both of my grandparents were educators on my mom's side. My grandfather was actually my 6th grade principal and my grandmother was my 4th grade teacher. And so they were very big about education. They were very involved in our community. Where I grew up, they were very involved in the church. They were always doing something with the NAACP or tutoring or supporting, minority students within our community. So my family and I are actually getting together to start a foundation in their honor to provide scholarships for minority students. So that's where I got that from. Both of my parents were educators. They both have their doctorate degrees in education. So, just watching them grow up while I was growing up as well. And then for me, I've always been driven, even from the time that I was young. So my parents never had to tell me to do homework. They never really asked me because 9 times out of 10 it was already done or it was about to be done. I was very much into reading. I remember being part of the Essence Book Club, like back in the day when that was a thing. I don't know if it's still a thing, but I would get like boxes and boxes of books every month and just devour all of them because I was very much into reading. So for me, I've always been about helping the underdog and also educating myself, whether it's spiritually, mentally, when it comes to physical fitness, anything that I can do to really grow and to improve and to be a better me. And so thinking in terms of that, that's what I wanted to instill in my students. So that's why I became an educator. Just letting them know that, hey, no matter where you come from, no matter what you've been through, because I've been through some things, you can come out a victor instead of a victim. And that's the mentality that I hope to not only now at this point instill in students, but also to instill in the teachers that I work with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing about this summer, it was a lot of heart drop moments. I don't know if it was the same thing for you. I had to put my phone down so many times because with the uprising, with the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, with the protests, with the riots, with the looting, it's scary.
Oh yeah.
And as leaders, we have to kind of like not hide our fear, but we have to feel that fear, reflect on it, and then move off of it, and then, just react. So, I'm trying to remember my question. So, yeah, no. So,
You
uh,
good?
yeah. So, okay, here we go. So, I remember you were in the room, and there was just you had these like accolades that you're doing right now. So many things that you're doing right now. Um, just talk about just talk about how you felt this summer when you was like, oh my gosh, like this is actually happened. Like, and then what did you do to kind of get yourself back in like, okay, I got to get on focus. Like, I don't know about you, but when George Floyd got killed and people were like rioting on the highways, and there was one dude who jumped on the truck and he kicked, like it was crazy,
Yeah.
Like, how do you not say save face, but how do you keep a poker face and keep it moving, keep it, keep the boat floating?
Honestly, prayer.
Oh, I knew you
Prayer.
were gonna say that. I knew you were gonna
I was
say
gonna
that.
say, yeah, you know already. Yeah, definitely. And prayer, you have to. Like, where else do you go? Right? Because I could easily sit and call up friends and complain and cry and, call up family members. But at the end of the day, what has that done? What has that solved? So for me, of course, the best person I always talk to or to go to, in times of trouble is God. He's the one that at the end of the day is the one who makes the ultimate decision about what's going to happen on a day-to-day basis, and really just putting your faith in him and knowing that he's going to lead you in the direction that he wants you to go in and that you need to go in. And so for me, when the pandemic hit, I mean, I'm a homebody anyway, so that's first and foremost. But when the pandemic hit, initially I wasn't really bothered by it. And I think only because I didn't initially understand the depth of it. But once I really started reading into it and you start hearing more, and then you start hearing of the deaths that are happening, then it's like, oh, this is a thing. Like, this is, pretty heavy. Um, but I took that opportunity really to just be still. And that's something that I really struggle with because I'm a very high energy person. So when I sit still, I feel like I'm being lazy. I feel like I'm not getting things done. Um, but it was a good thing for me because it forced me to be still. It forced me to sit down and really reflect on who I was, just as a woman, as a daughter, as a wife, as a friend, as a now coming in as a new assistant principal on this campus, and things that I needed to do. So it was a really positive thing for me, as far as like the George Floyd incident, and a few incidents after that, Breonna Taylor.
Right.
It's hard. And I can't say it was hard. It is hard, and it's going to continue to be hard because at this point I don't see it not it halting, I guess, in a sense. It's something that's gonna continue to be an issue until, something changes. And I was just finished watching, I don't know if you've seen the movie American Skin.
Oh,
Um, but I just finished watching that movie with my husband this morning. And at the end of the movie, I just cried. I just cried. And it was more out of frustration and anger, So you have to see it. I don't want to give it away about, what it's about, but it was very frustrating. I was very angry, but those are two emotions that always come up, of course, when the George Floyds and the Breonna Taylors, lose their life in that way. Um, but even with that, all you can do is continue to pray, but also, faith without works is dead. So even with prayer, you still have to get up and do something. So find out what it is that you can do within your community, um, to put yourself, to do some kind of action. Don't just sit still and talk to your family about it. Don't just converse about it with friends. Don't just make hashtags and post little, cute things on Facebook or whatever. Do something. Be part of the solution.
We learn from our still moments to prepare us for more and future still moments. So for me,
Yes.
it was Hurricane Katrina. Me and my mother, we were in New Orleans and we were in our house, and just seeing that was like a still moment, and I cried instantly. But then I, picked it back up, and I had those similar feelings a lot this summer with the pandemic and everything else you said. Could you maybe share like a still moment that you experienced that prepared you for this amazing position and opportunities you have now?
Oh, yeah. So it was after my first, I want to say maybe 2 weeks, my first 2 weeks. And so I actually started on contract a few days before I was actually scheduled to come in,
First 2 weeks
only
of teaching?
because, hmm,
The first 2 weeks of teaching?
being an assistant principal.
Got it. Okay, got
Yes.
it. Okay. Hmm.
So I came in early only because I wanted to really get a feel of everything and really, get the layout of the building, meet the staff and start building those relationships with everyone. And then I remember our first full staff meeting that we had. And, we went around, we had our conversations, and I went home that evening and I was sitting, just being still. And I almost had like a slight panic attack, I guess, because it was at that moment like, ooh, am I really going to be able to do this? Like, am I going to be able to be the leader for this campus that I know that God has called me to be? And so it was in that moment that I really had to sit and pray. And then after I prayed and asked God for clarity and for direction, then I had to be intentional about sitting and listening for a response. And so, in all honesty, I didn't get a response that night. I
Yeah.
didn't get a response that next day. And so it's actually a few days later that I got the response that I needed. And it came from my content coach, my instructional coach. And he sends this little meme, this little message out of the blue. And I wish I still have it saved, I don't have it memorized. Um, about, I am where I'm supposed to be.
Mm.
Basically, is in summary, is what it said. And so I was very appreciative, in that moment. And of course, thanked him and thank God for that response because it was definitely what I needed. So,
And what's his name? You want to shout him out?
yes, Leo Contreras, Mr. Contreras, shout out to you. You're awesome. You're the bomb.
Yeah,
Snap,
absolutely.
snap, snap, snap. Hey, I did it. See? Snaps.
Yeah, no, no, you good, sis, you good.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's an amazing content coach.
Beautiful, beautiful. My mother taught me that, manners can get you so many, because you never know how people are feeling, and that simple gesture he gave you, you remembered and you gave him a shout out on an amazing podcast. Oh my
Yes.
gosh. Excellent, excellent. Cool, cool. So let's talk about coaching, right? So when I was when I was going to educational school, I was never taught that like I was supposed to have a coach. And then once I didn't have one and then got one, I just was like, are there really teachers teaching without a coach? because I could not imagine doing this job without my coach, Melissa Doherty from New Orleans, Xavier. I got to give her a shout out. She has literally transformed me to the educator I am today. And it's only because she is a great coach, you know? So what happens if a teacher doesn't have a coach, and how important are coaches?
I mean, teachers can still succeed without having a coach. I mean, Michael Jordan was still going to be Michael Jordan without a coach, but, the greatest of all time, the GOAT.
Yeah.
Um, but coaches really help you to hone those skills,
Mm.
and they really teach you to think outside of the box and look at things that you may not necessarily see from your perspective. So, it's just like coaching a team to success. Yes, you have all the great pieces, but then how do you put those pieces together to make the game effortless, to make you win the game effortlessly, should I say. So, in thinking in terms of education, it's the same way. Teachers, you have some really great teachers that have all of the necessary pieces to be successful. However, when you get a coach that can come in and help you streamline that, and to put it into a lesson plan that flows and allows you to be able to deliver your instruction in a way that is equitable, there's that word again, that is equitable to all of the students that are in your classroom. So you're differentiating, you're able to use your formative and summative assessments to be able to inform your instruction, and you're able to clear up those misconceptions that students may have and be able to create corrective instruction action plans that support student academic growth. And when you have a coach that can come in and support you with all of these things, it makes it easier because now you're not doing it by yourself. You have someone that's cheering you on. You have someone that's guiding you in the right direction. You have someone that you can bounce ideas off of and who can support you with those needs. And if needed, they can also come in and, teach a lesson for you. So maybe you're not sure of a standard that needs to be taught and you need them to come in and model that for you. They are able to do that. So I firmly believe that coaches are a necessity on a campus. So whether you're a veteran teacher or a new teacher, they can always add value to your instructional practices.
How important is having the right voice when you're a coach? Because I've given advice and I've said something and it just didn't come off the right way. And it just tore the whole relationship up. And I just was giving advice. I'm like, the kids can't be doing this, doing now. You got to do this. And then before you know it, it became this whole like, oh, I'm taking it personal. I'm a terrible teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, I'm not trying to offend you. I'm just being honest with you. But then my coach, she'll probably do it. I guess why? Because I'm not the coach. She's the coach. Getting my coaching skills. So that's probably the wrong issue. But the way she does it, it's completely like, what were the areas of growth? What were your positives and negatives? Would you like to do, it's like, how do you develop that dialect? I guess, how do you develop that skill?
It is tough to develop that, especially when you're one of those people who you're like, okay, do this, this, and this, and you'll be fine. Do this, this, and this, and you'll be good. But what coaching really does is you have to form your questions in a way that allows that individual to almost feel like they're coming up with the idea themselves, or you're forming those questions in a way that allows them to dig deeper into the tools that they already have and say, hey, I can do this. Now, how can I take what I know and elevate it and take it to the next level? So they're really just guiding you towards success instead of just giving you, here, do it. And so that's definitely an art form. And so going into coaching sessions, I always suggest planning out those questions. And that's the importance of going in, doing those observations, seeing what's going on in the classroom, and even having those one-on-one conversations with teachers beforehand, before you even get to a coaching cycle, just to really get a feel for who they are as an educator, because there may be some teachers that will be like, you know what, just tell me what I need to do so I can go do it. And then you will have those teachers that you kind of, you have to finesse a little bit,
Yeah.
and kind of coddle a little bit to get them to the right direction. But that goes back to just building relationships. You have to build those relationships to really figure out how you can address certain individuals.
And it sounds like that's the same thing we should be doing with kids,
Exactly.
students,
Hmm.
I think sometimes as teachers, we forget that we definitely need to be a student sometimes for us to become better, especially with teaching, it's not a competition. I love that. I love that. I love that. So my last question is, what is your consulting business and what was the motivation behind that? And then what do you hope for it?
So for my consulting business, so initially it wasn't even supposed to be educational consulting. So initially I actually wanted to do more of kind of like life coaching. But with the history that I have, as far as my experience in education, my experience with being a coach, my experience with, not being afraid to make those relationships with, people and really find out what makes them tick, especially, as educators, it would at that point it's only natural that, hey, that's what I need to be doing, that's my purpose, that's the direction that I need to be going in, only because I have a very, very deep passion for, education, especially when it comes to minority students. And so when I decided to go back to school and get my doctorate degree, I wanted to get it specifically in curriculum and instruction, and it had to be specifically a PhD. So the philosophy behind curriculum instruction, only because I have this idea in my mind, and I know it's going to happen. I just don't know when it's going to happen, but I have this idea in my mind of developing curriculum specifically for minority and low income students.
Okay.
And so ultimately at some point I will get there and I will collaborate with some great individuals. I'm not sure who they're going to be yet, but we'll come up with something and it's going to be great. But until then, um, with my consulting business, my main focus is really going to be on coaching leaders and coaching teachers to be able to effectively instruct minority students and low income students, and what that looks like and what that sounds like in the classroom. And one of the first things that teachers are going to have to come to terms with, um, is the implicit biases that they tend to carry when they go into the classroom, and then how that impacts their instruction, and then the effect that that has on students and their educational process. So we'll see. We'll see what comes, but that's why I'm here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the name of the business is Jae Elle Consulting LLC, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Absolutely. And you can find that on your IG. Where can you find your IG?
So my Instagram is at Jae Elle Consulting. My website is www.jlconsulting.org.
And then what's some you have something with the NAACP? Because I remember you said something.
Oh, so I mean, I'm a part of several organizations. So I
I got it
am,
written down here. Yeah.
yes.
Gamma Phi Data, San Antonio Leader and Teachers, Texas Alliance, Black School Educators, National, okay, NAACP, African American Chambers of Commerce, Texas State African American Alumni Network. Whew, like
Yeah.
maybe you get to chill, I hope you get to relax, play basketball or something.
I do get to relax. I do. So yeah, of course I like to go get my nails done, all that good stuff. I like to read, watch movies, and chill. Can't play basketball anymore. Basketball is my favorite sport. Love
Okay,
it. Yeah. That's, I actually just had a surgery not too long ago from an old basketball injury that I finally got fixed after all these years. But
what happened?
yeah, oh, I partially dislocated it
Your
playing
shoulder?
basketball. Yeah.
Oh, you be playing. Like
Oh
you,
yeah, it's serious. It
I
gets deep.
was joking when I said that.
No,
You're
no, it gets deep. No, I'm very much an athlete.
no way. That's what's up. Did you play in high school or
I did. I did.
how did
I
it?
started playing basketball when I was about 7 years old.
You should have
Yep.
told me that. I would have started a whole conversation with that. I'd be like, man, forget all this teaching stuff. Let's
We
talk
can
about
say that for next time. We can say that. Yeah, basketball, track, volleyball.
cool. Who's your favorite athlete growing up?
Whew. I didn't have that's a lot. My favorite basketball player growing up, surprisingly to most, was Allen Iverson. He was definitely the answer. That was my favorite for a while.
Was it the braid or the tattoos or his the
It was
hair?
his game. It was his game. He was small, he was quick, that was me. So I was like, that's it right there.
Got it. Because all the girls looking at how he looks. You looking at the game. Got
Yeah, I'm looking at, no. It's
it.
definitely his game. I
Absolutely.
like his handles. He had nice handles.
Okay, cool. Well, man, then you gotta start like a clubhouse. Teachers who used to play basketball, so they can talk about all their old basketball games and stuff. That would be amazing. Cause my kids, they look at me, right? Cause that's how I get them. I get them with the basketball because they think that I'm just like this nerd. And then once I get on the court, I bounce it like I'm like I don't know what I'm doing. And then I shoot it. They're like, and then before you know it, they're all tired. I won the game. Yeah, but that's how I get their respect, and then I get them in the classroom.
What's funny is, so this is one of the things I guess I was talking about in the room the other night. But the way that I used to get my fourth graders is we would have freestyle Fridays,
Yeah,
and so we would freestyle. So we'd have to we would have to freestyle about different topics that we were learning about in the classroom, and so we would do little rap battles. So it was pretty fun.
I love it. I got my sister Jae Ricks dropping the gems. What do you want people to get from this podcast?
What I really want people to get from this at the end of the day is kind of what we talked about at the very beginning. Really, my teacher tip is, because of where we are currently within this pandemic and how difficult and challenging it is for everyone. So, not just parents, but for the students, for teachers, for administrators, I'm sure even the superintendents and state representatives, this is a very difficult time. And so being able to really extend each other that grace could go a long way. And so instead of approaching each other in a very negative way, ask what you can do to help. Ask what, ask what supports they need, to get through whatever it is that they're going through, because you never know what people are going through at home. We've had several, staff that have lost family members, and I'm sure you've had several friends or associates that have lost family. They have lost jobs. They have lost, homes as a result of losing those jobs. So, being able to really love on each other is the place that we're at this point. It needs to be done.
And that's the simplicity, y'all. I got my sister Jae Ricks dropping the gems. She is a all-star coach. She was an all-star basketball player, but she had to drop the basketball, pick up the book, teach the teachers how to teach our kids. I appreciate you so much on the T Simple podcast. You be blessed. Peace out, y'all.
Bye. Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity. Y'all have a good evening.